Okay, and welcome to this video. We are going to, this is an edited version of today's coverage of the Long Island Railroad listening session and open house at Adelphi University that took place on Thursday, May 31st at 7 p.m. at Adelphi. The doors did open at 6 and I arrived shortly after. And after passing through a security checkpoint, there was an area of tables and the press was there. You basically had different tables for different issues. I went over to the scheduling table to talk about, the first and foremost concern I have, as you know, is with the Harold signal work and why the Huntington Branch has been singled out to have reduced service for so many countless weekends, while the Babylon Branch remains untouched, and that this last-minute change after we were promised to get more service, and then they went back on it. So, as far as the attempt to, when I asked them about that, they said they made an attempt to preserve service by proposing that, that was proposed by Mr.Eng to have every other Huntington train end at Jamaica to preserve half-hourly service on the Huntington Branch when this Harold signal work is going on, and that there would be 90-minute service on the Port Jeff branch, but they said other projects got into conflict with that project, whatever that means. I did say I have a feeling that certain people on the Babylon branch were not happy about it. They didn't say anything to that, but I think that the people on the Babylon branch got wind of this, and they're like, they don't want them transferring to our trains. I still think that's what happened. And you'll see that the Babylon branch people really flexed their muscle in this meeting, despite being delayed tonight. The other thing is, when I asked them why can't the Babylon branch have reduced service to every hour, because the Huntington branch has a lot of connections to Port Jeff branch trains, and then there's the track work on the Ronkonkoma branch. They said, we can't touch the Babylon branch. Very seriously, we can't touch the Babylon branch. And they would not go on record with that. They would not go on record with that. I asked to actually interview them in front of the camera about this. They would not go on record about that. Obviously, they're not going to go on record about it because they know it's wrong. The good news is, when I spoke to the scheduling team, they said that they will look into having the Ronkonkoma train stop at Mineola. And so Mr. Eng also said that to me also. That at least they can do that, and that will help us here in Mineola. But for the folks in Huntington, I really feel sorry for you. I really do. And the people on Port Jefferson, they are getting screwed. They are getting screwed, and it's really not fair. It's not fair at all. It really is not fair. The other thing that I can discuss were the condition of the tracks, which need to be improved. And they said that the Ronkonkoma Branch double track project will be complete by the end of the summer. And when that is done, they're not going to necessarily add all the service to Ronkonkoma off-peak, because they have other things. They're going to want to replace all the other track, the old track, the one that's currently used, and replace that with concrete ties. So they're going to get, they know the wood is in bad shape. That's going to be going. They're going to talk. They said that they're also, the Huntington Branch is going to have concrete ties as well. So they are working on that. I'm glad the scheduling team at least was willing to hear me out on adding that Ronkonkoma stop. But again, the people on the Babylon Branch have a lot of power and a lot of clout, and you'll see that in this meeting. We're going to edit some things, but you had that going on. So I guess without further ado, we will go to the meeting, and I'm going to make some points. The first part will be most of Phillip Eng's presentation, and then we're going to talk, and then we'll go to the politicians that decided to show up. The second thing I want to point out is the location of where they had this meeting, and it's out of the way. Adelphi University is actually all the way down here, tucked into the southwest corner of Garden City. All right, and it's not really that close to the Nassau Boulevard station or the Garden City station, but it is somewhat close. But for people coming from the main line, this is just the Hempstead line right here. It's quite a distance, and it's quite a walk. It was quite a walk. It took me almost an hour to walk back from there in the evening all the way back to Mineola. I asked them, why don't you have a shuttle bus to Mineola? They're like, well, we should, but we don't, They felt bad that they didn't, but You know, I mean, this is not exactly. There's no bus routes that go by here. I think they could have picked a better location. It should have been. It should have been in Mineola or Hicksville, in my opinion. You know, I'm sure they would have been able to find a space in Mineola, or even Hicksville. All right. Or Nassau Community College, even here, even though there isn't a train station that close to it, there's a lot of bus routes that go to it. But, you know, sometimes I have a feeling they just pick these locations because they really don't want low-income people going. That's just playing, it's just a theory I'm putting out there.
Make sure that folks know that I'm accessible, that this key staff, senior leadership at Long Island Railroad is accessible, and that we're open and we want to have that dialogue with our customers, because only through that dialogue is the way that we can better understand the issues that our customers are facing. Long Island Railroad Forward is what we are. It's a new philosophy, it's a new way of doing business. It's treating things with more urgency, and that's something that I hope that as I go through this, you'll see that happening. So one of the things that, as I mentioned, since I started in early April, was to get out and to really hear. And as Lisa mentioned, I'm a commuter myself. I experienced a lot of the things that I've been hearing from the riders, but from my perspective, it's important for me to hear those opinions to make sure they either validate or to get different perspectives on the things. And it's not just what we believe is the customer service, and it's what our customers deserve, and the responsibility of ours to provide that. And what we've heard, obviously, a reliable and safe commute is important, but it's also important to have one that is a comfortable commute, one that allows them to know that they can get to their destinations on time, whether it's for work, whether it's for pleasure. And then also our customers have talked about the need for communication. That's something that, while they've been communicating with us, I think their feeling is that we've not been listening. And that's what tonight is about, that's what a lot of the other events have been about, and that's what we'll continue to do as we move forward. So, how do we get there? How do we restore the reliability of the system? How do we regain public trust? We're looking to improve the railroad through being more dependable. We're looking to make sure that it is a customer-focused railroad. So when we make decisions, it's to make sure that it's not just what we think is right, as I said earlier. It's to make sure that those decisions take your needs into account, takes the issues that you're facing into account as we make those decisions. And it was one that I wanted to ensure that people know that we're treating things with a much more sense of urgency. What I found when I first started is that, yes, we have a plan to address things, we have a plan to do things under a capital program, but those capital programs, as we've seen, sometimes they get delayed, projects don't get done on time, and when you're relying on a capital program to address certain state of good repair things, that doesn't give you the ability to tackle issues in our infrastructure that need to be done. So what we've decided to do is there are certain areas that we found as we look through our infrastructure and the things that were causing delays. And what we said is we're going to be fixing those now. You're actually not saving money by fixing it later. You need to take care of those issues now, avoid repeat delays, and make sure you fix it right. So what we wanted to do also is then make sure we take a look at how we do the work. We wanted to take a look at our best practices in the past. We want to look at best practices across agencies, across the nation, and worldwide best practices. And then we also wanted to see that what new technologies are out there. We didn't want to just say that a different railroad is doing it and that's the only way to do it. We really need to make sure that we're looking at innovative technology, innovative materials. We need to make sure that we're trying to do things differently and think outside the box, because the thing we need to do is make sure we're doing it efficiently and we're doing it timely, and that's the only way we're going to restore the service in a timely manner. So what we also want to do is to use that technology to make sure we empower our customers with real-time information. Something I heard so much that they understand that there's work going on, they understand that even there may be some delays, but what frustrated our customers is that they didn't know those delays would be 5 minutes or those delays would be an hour. And in that case, it doesn't allow them to plan their day. It doesn't allow them to call their office, and it doesn't allow them to call their loved ones whether or not they should be picked up or not. And It also doesn't allow them to decide that maybe that day is not the day to take the train. Maybe they should opt to take a different way in because their service is having issues. So that's what we're focused on, communication, but also taking care of the infrastructure needs. So with those infrastructure needs, again, it's not just fixing it and getting the system running up, which is important to us, but then it's making sure we go back and we think what caused that problem, and that's the root causes. So we've analyzed things differently. What we did is we took a look back at 2017. We had 205 switch failures. And we also identified that out of those 205, 44% of those switch failures were caused at 10 particular switch locations. So what we want to do is make sure we focus on those areas that are causing the most delay. And it's not just getting in there and fixing it temporarily, it's making sure that we fix those things permanently. In some cases, some of these switches were part of a capital project that was scheduled for the next program, but that's several years away. We couldn't afford to do that. I talked earlier at a committee meeting with our board members. There was a particular switch 25 that brought some of this to my attention. That switch, we actually had 2 delays caused by it in the same day. So that type of situation, we all found that was unacceptable. I'm happy to say that switch 25 has been permanently repaired. There were drainage issues, there were replacement needs, and we've taken care of that. So that's what we're doing. Let's fix it now and make sure those delays don't recur. And those, as I said, we're going to be doing them over the course of the next 6 months. We want to maximize this construction season. This is actually switch 25, and as I mentioned, it's already complete. The other part of our effort is to go out and do a very comprehensive inspection of our system, rail inspections, rail grinding, but also another key area that we found was a common area of problems, track circuits. So we're upgrading 370 track circuits. That caused 36% of the failures due to track circuits. Again, it's a fix-it-now approach, tackle them, and make sure those issues do not recur at those locations. And we also identified the switches, track circuits, that are in some of the most critical locations in the system as well. Ones that the failure occurs affects multiple lines. That's something that, again, it's a high priority area, high priority component, and we're fixing it. Something else that maybe some of you have heard about, when we took a look at 2017 and some of the issues that we were having, 417 trains were delayed because of vehicles on tracks. And those vehicles on tracks for many different reasons. But grade crossing is something that we are focused on. And one of the things that we are hearing is that vehicles were making, or the drivers were making wrong turns. They were following GPS in some cases. Unfortunately, that was as a result of parallel roads that are adjacent to our tracks. So it may tell you to turn left, turn right. And in poor visibility at night, young drivers or folks who are maybe just for whatever reason distracted, we wanted to make sure that we did everything that we can. So the original plan was to tackle the 65 grade crossings where we had parallel roads by the end of the year. We felt that was not good enough. We said, let's do all 65 before Memorial Day. Those 65 where we have parallel roads are done. What we installed is high visibility delineators. They're 4 feet high, so motorists approaching can see. We continued the lane markings across to show that the roadway goes across the tracks, and in the pavement there's also reflectorized delineators. But we also, let's not stop there. We have 296 grade crossings where vehicles cross our tracks. Even if there's not a parallel road, we thought this was something worth putting in. And so all 296 will be installed before the end of the year. Again, we want to be proactive. We want to make it safe for the community, and we want to make it safe for our workers and the riders on the trains. Another thing that I'm proud to announce, we've been working with GPS providers that provide directions, Waze in particular, and by this month we'll be first to have one of these GPS providers actually start to identify grade crossings on their system. So not only will we be improving visibility on the roadways, but now if people are using these GPS apps, they will clearly inform these riders as they're approaching a grade crossing to take extra caution that they should be aware that it is a great crossing. So we're providing all this information to these GPS providers, and that will be in their apps moving forward. Something else, I know it's still May, right? It's May, but we know that hurricane season starts, I believe, tomorrow, actually. And I know winter's right around the corner. Last year, we had 2,600 trains that were delayed due to weather-related events. So we can't wait until fall. We can't wait until the winter to start planning. One of the things we wanted to do is we took a look at what caused those delays. And we're pulling in all the efforts. We're accelerating that work to make sure we get it done before those seasons hit. We want to be prepared for hurricane season. We want to be prepared for winter. And we know that the storms are only seem to be getting worse. I was chatting with some of the residents earlier outside, and these 50-year storms are now occurring multiple times in a year. So it really is, and not only that they're occurring more frequently, they're occurring much more severely.
Okay, so it's not the whole thing, but I wanted to just show you the highlights. You know, the fix-it-now approach, better communication with the customers, and nipping things in the bud before things get out of control is really important. And I really think his engineering background really just is just a great help to this. And the other thing that I was very happy that Mr. Eng brought up, climate change. Yes, a lot of people talking about climate change, that these storms that are supposed to occur once every 50 years, they're occurring every couple of years. So coming up next, you won't believe who showed up. Miss Laura Curran herself showed up and came across as extremely snobby. So take a listen to this.
Thank you very much. So transit-oriented development is really crucial to growing our economy, keeping our young people, attracting business, walkable downtown. So TOD, we call it. T is key for that, transit. So I'd love to hear what your plans are to help encourage transit-oriented development, the kind that we desperately need here in Nassau.
Well, you're absolutely right that transit and mass transit is a key component. I've often said that, and as Elisa mentioned, I spent a lot of my career at the New York State Department of Transportation, but I also know that you just can't have enough highway system to sustain Long Island or New York City or any thriving area. Mass transit is crucial.
Problem is, Laura, you won't put your money where your mouth is and restore all the service that's been cut since Nice Bus came along. You want transit, but you aren't willing to get MTA to come back here. All right. This company, Nice, has literally they've cut half the ridership now. Long Island Bus have thousands more cars on the road. And what have you done to improve transit in Nassau County? What have you done? Absolutely nothing. You just want to have some silly bag tax that's going to punish the poor and the middle class. That's all. She came across as extremely snobby, extremely conceited. She even had the little sunglasses in her hair. I mean, my gosh, she's coming across as an extreme, typical Babylon Branch snob. Who doesn't really care about Nice Bus riders. She talks about transit-oriented development, yet won't do a damn thing about all the breakdowns that occur daily, on a daily basis with Nice Bus, because there's no maintenance. She won't do anything to get MTA back. She doesn't give a crap about bus riders, because if she did, she'd be back at the table with the MTA and at least trying to get back all the service that Nice cut. Thousands more cars on the road, Laura, and you aren't doing a damn thing to get these people back on the bus. And she was followed up by Todd Kaminsky, another person who represents the South Shore, speaking about how bad the Babylon Branch has had it. Like they're the only ones that have to suffer, and he even complained about his pants getting ripped by the seats on the M7. Cry me a river. Do you believe these people? And they get to speak first.
Thank you so much, Mr. Eng, for speaking with us tonight. Although we are in an auditorium that has a decent number of people here, I think it's better if we envision us and you addressing a crowd that could fill Citi Field. Because while people are busy with their lives, many on the Babylon line tonight actually couldn't get here because of some train-related issues. This, in terms of concerns for Long Islanders, ranks at the top. What happened last year was mind-boggling and unacceptable. The railroad really just failed. And people move to Long Island knowing that there's this great economic engine of the greater New York metro area, and they want to live in a suburban setting. But the railroad is the link that makes that happen, and when it doesn't work, it's not really an exaggeration to say that Long Island doesn't work. And last year really just drove people to the breaking point at work. They missed critical meetings, and it really set them back. And at home, it was very tough on people who had to take care of elderly relatives, of their children, and just get on with their lives. And I heard really tough stories, and I actually received emails from people, some of which I read to Chairman Loda, which said, I've been taking the railroad for 30 or even 40 years, I've never seen it like this. So I'm glad that there is new leadership here that is going to be addressing this head-on, where you're hearing pre-recorded tapings and there's no one to really direct your frustration at, and even take really important suggestions, from small things such as why are the armrests pointy and rip my pants all the time, which happened to me last week, to much more important ones, such as why didn't anyone tell me that this train would be canceled and ruin my morning. I think people also want a dignified commute. They don't want to be packed into cars, standing aisle to aisle, or let out on platforms where they can barely move and are fearful of falling onto the tracks, which is not unfounded. That happens every day. And I think people want to be able to get through Penn Station, and if God forbid an emergency, know that there's a clear way to do that in a very difficult and crowded environment.
Comments. I know the challenge is huge, but I'm very excited about the challenge, and there's been times in the past where people think things can't be done, and we find a way to do them. And those successes that we've had is what we need to build on, and we need to take those best practices. I've seen projects that took decades before, projects that haven't been moved, and I've seen projects now being delivered on time and budget. We have, out on our Ronkonkoma Branch, from Farmingdale to Ronkonkoma, proud to say that one we should be substantially complete by August, and we expect to have improved service in September. And that'll be 16 months ahead of schedule and on budget. And that's something I think we need to build upon ourselves. I know third track is something else that we're going to work very hard to make sure that, again, on time and on budget, we need to restore public confidence. I know there's been a lot of talk about the MTA, cost of our projects. It is, in many cases, more expensive, but there are certain areas where we know we can improve, and we're focused on, not just at the headquarters, but we're focused here at Long Island Railroad. It's the only way we're going to restore confidence, and quite frankly, it's the only way that I can really ask people to help support funding for us, if you know that we're delivering these things more efficiently, more effectively, and with quality and on time, as you said. So I look forward to working together with everyone, and I look forward to the continued dialogue from our riders and your support.
Kaminsky sounds like he's talking for all Long Island Railroad commuters, but in reality, he's just talking about the Babylon branch. And, it's like they're the only ones that have the problems. We all have the problems. They've got it better than a lot of us do. And some of the things that come across, we could fill a stadium. You could sense that intimidation from him, saying, this is the Babylon branch, don't mess with us. And you could just sense that. Anyway, next is Lane Phillips, who is my state representative, my state senator.
As a commuter for 20 years myself, I will say for many of those years, I had tremendous service, and something happened over the last couple of years, and we all probably know what had happened. It aged out, we didn't put resources to where they are, and there's multiple reasons. So this is a tremendous step forward, I thank you. Addressed, we see some great things in this project, but is the Long Island Railroad doing any future forecasting? Is ridership going to be up over the next 3 to 5 years, and what are you doing to plan for that? Sorry.
Keeping those cars, because we need to make sure that not only do we have enough for today, but we need enough for next year. Looking longer term, east side access, third track, obviously we have more capacity. We need to make sure that we're getting not only the additional employees, we need to start bringing on employees, because we need to be ready to operate on day one, but we also need to make sure that we have enough fleet, and that's something that we're talking right now with the different manufacturers, and we're discussing internally how to move forward to ensure that we have everything we need to handle those needs. Because my intention is not to just sustain where we are today. My intention really is to be able to support the growth that we all hope to happen on Long Island. We're seeing it happen. I need to make sure the railroad is being a partner in that, not a hindrance to that.
So coming up next, we have another representative from the South Shore, New York State Senator Carl Marcelino, who represents Southeast Nassau and Southwest Suffolk, talking about the Wantagh situation, which I do find it unacceptable. There should be a working elevator, and he's right. There should be elevators at Lindenhurst and Amityville and Massapequa Park. But once again, it seems that you could see the South Shore has sent the people to advocate for them and to act like they're the only ones suffering. Wantagh, is coming along much better than Hicksville has, and I really like the response from Phillip Eng, because he made sure not to put the priority just on Wantagh. He spoke about Hicksville too, but see how they're putting him in the middle.
Good to see you again, and I thank you for reaching out to the communities as you've been doing and visiting us in Mineola. I share the comments that my colleagues have made. Two issues I ask you to comment on. One, Wantagh Railroad Station and status of that program and that elevator, or non-elevator, whichever it is. And also, again, we really need to give the attention you and I have discussed with those with disabilities. And I'm interested in how soon you think we're going to see something done in that Massapequa Park through Lindenhurst area where we don't have any elevator access at this point.
Thank you, Senator. Wantagh Station, actually Wantagh and Hicksville are two of the stations that I spoke with staff when I first started, because I too read the stories and I hear the concerns about how long these stations are taking. I am pleased to say that Wantagh Station will be done this year, later this year. We are taking a look to see if there's any way possible to accelerate that a little bit, but we know we will deliver that this year. One of the challenges we have, we're trying to find ways to identify to accelerate, is it means maybe more service diversions, things of that nature. Right now we're challenged with trying to make sure we deliver on all of our projects. Second track, as I mentioned, third track will be starting up in September. The design is already working as a design build job, and they're putting utilities. But Wantagh Station is something that we will be finishing this year. The elevator, I know that has caused problems in the past. We've been meeting with that vendor as well. And we have teams that are out there to monitor that situation. And Chris, is that closed right now still, or is it closed? It's still closed, right? It is fixed. So ADA on the South Shore, Senator, I know you talked about that. We have 14 stations out of our 124 stations that don't have ADA. It's something I was just talking with the staff outside that we need to focus on making sure all of our stations are accessible.
Next up, you guessed it, yet another person from the Babylon branch. This person actually may be related to Laura Curran, Brian Curran, representative for the Lynbrook area, and he also had the mayor of Lynbrook speak about just how horrible the Lynbrook station is. And yes, it needs a renovation, but they exaggerated the condition of it, and it's ridiculous. Floral Park was a lot worse. I was in Floral Park, and that station looks a lot worse, and yet no one was there to speak about the condition of that station. But Lynbrook, well, in Lynbrook they demand a whole new station. Do you see how demanding these people are? You will see just how ridiculous it gets.
Good evening, and I want to congratulate you on your new position. Also, thank you for coming up to Albany to speak with the legislators and giving us the opportunity to speak here tonight. I represent the 21st Assembly District that has stations from Valley Stream out to Freeport and also along the Long Beach line up into Oceanside. I share and echo the concerns that were spoken about the performance problems that we experienced in the last year for all of the riders in all of those stations. But I'm also here primarily because of one station and that we've had conversations with,
And out of respect for him, I'm going to ask that the mayor of Lynbrook, Howard Beach, get up and say a few words on it before I do, just because it's his village. And I appreciate you allowing me the opportunity.
Thank you, Senator.
Thank you, Senator. First of all, I appreciate Hector introducing you to me as Phil. Phil, I'm Alan.
Thank you,
I
Al.
see a starting of a great relationship, friendship here. As I explained to you outside, I'm not going to take much of your time because we pretty much covered a lot of things outside. But Lynbrook has been fighting this battle for 10 years. It's deplorable, the condition of our station. I know you walked through it. My concern is we do a half project, we're still left with a deplorable situation. Safety is a concern, yes, but aesthetics to our village is another concern. That's a very big concern for the residents, especially with the incident that happened in the past. It's very upsetting to the residents what's going to happen to our station. Is it going to stay this way? Is it going to be modernized? Speaking to you earlier, I know Laurelton, Rosedale, Valley Stream, skip over Lynbrook, go into Rockville Center, right down the line, out to Seaford. They've been all updated. Lynbrook has been left. It's time for a fix. It's time for Lynbrook residents to have what they should have, a new station. Not a fix, a brand new station from Peninsula Boulevard all the way down, actually right over to Sunrise Highway and down to the end, towards Rockville Center. Every intersection is falling apart. Every trestle is falling down. It's deplorable the conditions we're dealing with. Can you give me a time frame of what we're going to do? And I do appreciate the fact that you did say we would get together and speak. If you want to leave it to that, give me a date when we'll get together, and we'll sit down and work this out. I'm really ears for you.
Well, thank you, Mayor.
I'll give this back to
Go ahead, Senator.
Thank you, and I just, before you respond to that, just because I know that we have a lot of Lynbrook riders here tonight, and I just think it's important for them to understand where we find ourselves. There is, based upon conversations between my office, the mayor's office, and your office, which has been very informative and very open to us, there is between $10 and $15 million available for work to be performed at the Lynbrook station. And that work, that monies, at least some of the majority of that monies have been available for several years through monies acquired by Senator Skelos for the Lynbrook train station. Now we are at a point where we're being asked to make a decision between whether, what we've been told for the last 10 years, a total renovation of the station so that it is similar to every, and I do mean every single station from Valley Stream to Seaford and from Valley Stream on the Long Beach line down to Oceanside, so that we would have a brand new station just like all the rest. But now we're being asked to make a decision whether that $10 to $15 million will be used now to make upgrades to the station, but not a full renovation of the station, which would then, in my opinion, jeopardize our ability to be considered for a total renovation under the 2019 capital program for the LIRR. So I understand that tonight is about dialogue, and I appreciate you giving the opportunity to speak here, but the problem is, for the past 10 years before you got here, we've been involved in that dialogue, and we've been told that we were getting a brand new station. And here we are again being told that at best, we're going to get a half solution. So I welcome, and I join with Mayor Beach in asking for some type of concrete timeline about when Lynbrook is actually going to see improvements to a station that is completely crumbling around the commuters. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator. And Mayor, I am glad that Hector introduced me as Phil, because that's what I tell all the customers and my riders. I'm Phil. You know, I'm just like everyone else. And I care just as much about Lynbrook and all the stations as everyone here does too. One of the things that we've talked about at the railroad is that we need to take pride in what we're doing, and we should consider the stations, we consider the trains like our homes, right? We want to welcome the people in our homes, and if it's not in a certain condition, then we should be, we need to fix things up. So that's why in the presentation, some of the initial things we know we need to do, make sure they're clean, make sure they're safe, Obviously, Lynbrook is one that I've seen it, and I know we talked about it. There is some money available in this capital program to do some work. Some of that is to make critical repairs to the viaduct itself, which need to be done. But also, as we discussed, is how do we make sure that the funds we invest are invested in a fashion that doesn't preclude what you're looking for, the long-term renovation, reconstruction of the station, but also we don't want to just invest and do something that gets ripped out when that time comes. So what I've committed to is that open dialogue where I'm going to come back after I have a chance to sit down with the team and go through all the different needs of Lynbrook Station and the viaduct and see how best we think that money can be used now, because like I said, I also don't think it's fair to the constituents and the people that use Lynbrook to have to wait for 2020 or 2021, perhaps when a job is awarded, to see some benefits. There are things that need to be done.
So I guess he hasn't been to Freeport, because Freeport's a lot worse than Lynbrook. That station is disgusting. All right, the waiting room is closed most of the time. There's gangs hanging out there. It smells like piss. There's no security, but he doesn't care about that. No, Assemblyman Curran doesn't care about that because it's not lily white. It's lower income, less white. We don't care. So these people really came out and showed their true colors today, and it's really unfortunate, but it was all on display for everybody to see. You want a station that looks bad? Floral Park. I was there, and it really is just, it looks like Nostrand Avenue. The lighting is falling apart. It looks like it's been completely forgotten. Lynbrook looks like paradise compared to this station. And yet, nobody's talking about that. Oh, that's right, because it's not on the pretty little Babylon branch, and it's not full of stockbrokers and all that stuff. You know, the station is awful. It should get renovated. This station should be completely replaced. That one should be completely replaced, and hopefully it will as a part of the mainline third track project. But next, we finally get to us peons, finally getting to speak. And this woman who is physically disabled has a very interesting and kind of sad story to tell about what it's like to be physically handicapped and how the Long Island Railroad discriminates against her.
Good evening, Mr. Eng. I'm very happy to be here tonight and have this opportunity to bring to you a cause that is very important to me. I'll be brief, but do need to convey a short story. 30 years ago, I decided to go by myself into the city by LIRR from Little Neck. I was meeting friends at Madison Square Garden to see a basketball game. This was a no-brainer. All went very smoothly on the trip. Staff was courteous and attentive. I got off the train with all the other passengers and headed to the elevator to go upstairs. The elevator was not responding to the call button. No signs were displayed saying it was out of order. As I turned to find perhaps another employee, I quickly realized the tunnels were empty. Not one passenger on the platforms. The escalators were not moving. There was only one train 3 tracks away. I resisted pushing the emergency call button as I was in no state of emergency, but instead a state of confusion. I yelled to the conductor on the only train, where was everybody? He responded that there was no train service because of a track fire eastbound. He would call up to the station master and we pulled the train out. I was all alone. About 10 minutes or so later, emergency crew came down, walking down the escalator to assist me upstairs to Penn. It was packed with people waiting to go down to the trains. Needless to say, I have not traveled alone ever since, even 30 years later. I've traveled on the LIRR with family, but each time I am still not convinced that such an event as 30 years ago won't happen again. Service for the disabled, as Senator Brooks has been advocating, service for the disabled is unreliable wherever you go, with or without warning. Facilities are not equally accessible. Maybe one station is accessible, but the other is not. $3 billion is slated for the third track project, but I had to lobby incessantly, both publicly and privately, to bring the Floral Park train station up to compliance. After 30 years, I should not have to lobby to use public transportation. But there were no qualms about adding Wi-Fi and modern conveniences to a number of other stations. Perhaps if we don't use the term ADA compliance, but rather universal design, the idea of making train stations unrestricted to all would be more appealing. I invite you to ride with me. In a wheelchair, I can hook you up. Because I don't think anybody can truly appreciate the significance of the issue until it is experienced. As I said to you earlier, I do thank you for this opportunity to address you directly. It demonstrates a true desire for change. Thank you.
I can't say it better than you just did. It is an area that we need to focus on, and it's one that, as I talked about, needing to do things with urgency. It's again one of those things where we can't say let's wait until we're doing a capital project on these things. So as we develop a capital program, funding for the last 14 stations, and then taking a look at making sure that when we do have elevators, they're functioning like as was brought up at one tour. We need to focus on the things that our customers need, and it's as you say, it's a universal need. It shouldn't just be something to meet some compliance. So I assure you we'll take a hard look at that, and that will be a priority of ours. It's something that we need to be doing.
And again, does Lynbrook look that bad? I don't think so. But anyway, coming up, I get to ask my question to Phillip Eng. Unfortunately, I couldn't get the answer I want. I know he wants to help us, but it's obvious with the people on the Babylon branch exercising their, flexing their Wall Street muscle. We are still up against a lot. But Phillip Eng is listening to us.
All right, hello. I want to thank you for hosting this. I think it's great. I've been very impressed with your leadership over the previous president. Now, I'm talking about, my question is in relation to the Harold signal work. We've been enduring many weekends of reduced service on the main line due to this signal work that's going on in Harold. And the thing is that we are dealing with this like for so many weekends this year already. And in the last agenda, it appeared that we were going to get half-hourly service at every other train ending at Jamaica. And then at the last minute, I go and look on the website, and it's still hourly service. I live in Mineola. I moved to Mineola because I can't drive. I need to rely on the train. I need frequent service of every half an hour. And to have to deal with hourly service, once again, it's extremely unfair. And I think that, we've been unfairly dealing with the burden of a lot of problems here on the main line. I heard a lot about the folks in Lynbrook having to deal with the bad station. I'm sure their station is not in good shape either. Mineola is in bad shape. There are a lot of other stations along the main line that are actually in worse shape than Lynbrook. And I would like an answer as to when this work will conclude and at least have the Ronkonkoma train stop at Mineola, because I think it's very unfair what's been going on. Our town's actually hurting. Less people are using the train because the trains are running less frequently. And I think that more should be done to resolve that. I don't think it's fair that we should have to continue to bear the burden of that.
Well, let me talk in terms of all of the ongoing work in the system, including what's going on in Harold, because there is a tremendous amount of activity going on. And I do know that every time we need to do this work, there are different diversions. We're trying to minimize those diversions. But I know what I believe I hear is frustrating you is that it's not what we say sometimes, it changes. One of the things that I've been working on is I've met with Amtrak, I've met with Capital Construction, and our own folks in terms of the work we're doing, whether it's Long Island Railroad Forward or our own in-house efforts. And what we need to do, and I've been stressing to those folks, is that when we establish schedules, we need to make sure that we're prepared to not only get the work done when we say we're going to do, we can't have cancellations, we can't have the work being only partially done and then requiring additional weekends, because all of these service changes are built around these schedules. And what's happening is when that work doesn't get done, that's where schedules go longer, that's where costs go up, and that's where our customers get inconvenienced more. So once we get our partners to work with us, and the intent again is it's about dialogue, it's about making sure that we are having that dialogue back and forth with those partners. It's the only way I can hold myself.
I just feel that the Ronkonkoma train should at least stop at Mineola. We're a very busy station, and on the weekends, it skips it. At least that would make up for the loss of the Huntington service. And I brought that up with.
We can take a look at that.
Thank you.
So coming up will be questions from other speakers about some concerns. One man brought up the Port Jefferson branch. Another one brought up the M3s, which, by the way, the M3s are not going anywhere. They are not being retired. So listen to these comments. I'm trying to, keep most of them brief, and then I'll get back to you at the end with the final word on what I thought of what happened today.
When I first met you a couple weeks ago, I asked about the Port Jeff branch and if there's any plans to improve service on the Port Jeff branch east of Huntington and to Hunters Point Avenue. Your response to me was, well, we're going to try and include the Port Jeff branch in the next capital plan, but also we're going to see what we can do now before we need millions and millions of dollars.
That keeps getting pushed out, but there are certain key areas where you can improve. Not only are we getting in there now, we're tackling areas that were prone to delays. There were several areas that caused delays along the just east of Huntington. That's part of what we're doing in the forward. Again, we wanted to make sure that they don't repeat. But then there's also other areas where we know we can improve reliability by looking at certain upgrades that we would do regardless of whether it's electrification or future double tracking in some areas out there.
Listen to the public speak. Just a couple of besides the obvious things like clean functioning bathrooms with a door that locks, PA speaker system that you can hear through every car, not just some cars, air conditioning that works in all the cars, maybe communication between conductors on one line with the conductors on another line in case of service delays or an emergency. Maybe you want to take a different line, you go to Farmingdale, get picked up instead of taking the Babylon line.
Cleanliness of the cars, the doors locking. Actually, yesterday when I was at the Hillside Maintenance Facility, that was one of the things I brought up because that's been brought to my attention several times. They are working on that piece. Actually, it's the clamps on those door latches that are bending and wearing away, as well as the catch plate on the wall side. So the team has developed a repair for that, and they're instituting that now, and as well as some other amenities that we're working on and we're testing before we roll out. But we know that being able to keep those cars, bathrooms particularly clean, is important. They're of no use if people don't want to use them because they're not clean. So there are a number of other things that we're working on.
Considering the past frequency of various problems in the East River Tunnel, it doesn't seem like there's any planning that's been done so that those disruptions could have proven methods that could be instituted to address the delays that they cause. Those delays create overcrowding conditions that are potentially hazardous. Canceling and combining rush hour trains puts 2 trains worth of people onto one train. I'm really concerned about that every time it happens. All it takes is for the train to make a sudden stop for the potential of physical injury on the train. I think we're very lucky that something like that hasn't happened yet, but it should be addressed. And then finally, when extreme delays do result in overcrowding conditions that prohibit ticket collection, the day riders get free ride, and the monthly ticket holders end up shouldering the costs of that with no recourse for compensation. Just wanted to bring these things up. Thank you.
Last part.
Overcrowding.
Overcrowding. It's one where the challenge is to try and get everyone to their destination. We know that. When an incident occurs and we have to take a train out of service, it's one where that folks are going to get on that train. We do cross honor with subways, but we also know that many people will still prefer to take the railroad. The only thing we can do is to provide better information and make sure that they know that there's other trains to follow. There are times where I've seen ourselves doing it, and we're going to try to make sure the announcements are that there is another train in 5 minutes or on such and such a track, so they don't have to crowd into that train. But we know that folks, the biggest concern is that that next train may not happen, so they're going to try to get in there. It's something that we're wrestling with. How can we accommodate those crowds when incidents occur? And it's both directions. The other day I noticed how our system was overwhelmed when there was a transit issue. It's one of those things where I don't have an answer for you now, but I'm cognizant of that concern that we have.
Empty buses the non-identified buses because no one likes school buses. For the 2020, school buses are not was involved in action. Also, non-identified should not send a nice bus booking for the overnight non-identified shuttle buses because the nice bus doesn't maintain the buses.
Busing, I know that we rely on busing when we have service disruptions. We rely on whether they're planned and in cases where they're not planned. And it's an area where I know we can improve on. It's an area that we've been discussing internally with regards to how we use buses, the quality of the buses, because we know that when we have those disruptions, it's important that our riders still can get to their destination. So we are taking a look at that, and it's an important component to us. And the other piece is that as we want to encourage more use of our railroads and the ridership, we also know that working with the local bus companies, NICE and others, is important to coordinate our schedules with their schedules, because it's great to be able to get to the station, but then when you get to the station, you need to have a way to get to your destination. And that could be through buses, that could be through perhaps bike share, that could be through a lot of different opportunities, aside from just having to take a taxi or a cab when you get to those. So those are the things that we're looking at. And as Elisa said, if you share your comments with us, we'll make sure we take a deeper look into the other components.
I've been taking the railroad for a long time. I've been riding it for 36 years, most of that time on the Hicksville line. And the first thing I want to say is that, people's patterns have changed in that time, but the railroad has done nothing. When I first started working, if you got to work at 8 o'clock, you were the first one there was no other breakfast. Now people routinely go in much, much earlier. Maryland Avenue is where I used to commute. I can't go there, it's too crowded, but Maryland Avenue has a 5:58, a 6:38, then it has 4 trains between 7 and 8. 10 trips a week that I take. I would say a minimum of 2, sometimes 4, 40% of the trips are taken on the trains, I don't even know what we call them anymore, the M something, from 1975, 85. How come $2 billion of investment just 15 years ago seems to be not, why are 40% of it, my numbers right? I can tell you, it's at least 20% of the time, if not 40% of the time, I'm on an old train. How can that be? What happened?
Well, to your first point, I know staff are taking some notes with regards to the train schedules and crowding, so we'll take a look at that.
And so one last thing on that, and at night, the 5:33 and the 6:08, which is really the only 2 options rush hour, are, I can't believe that they're legal in terms of crowding. Everybody here knows the 5:33 feeds like 5 other trains. I mean, it's like the only train everybody has to get on, and then 5 other trains in Jamaica. And I just don't understand. It's like, does anybody see this? I mean, this is not hard, but anyway, I'm sorry.
No, don't be sorry. I mean, and the other piece is that I realize that we have some older fleet that I talked earlier that we're actually going to be keeping now. I don't have the luxury of releasing those yet. We were working hard on upgrading the existing fleet that we have. I know, in fact, I know I keep mentioning it, but I was at Hillside also showing me how we're going and we're replacing seats, because seats is obviously something very important to a lot of customers. The cars that you talked about, they're all in service. We need to get more new cars, and we need to continue to get more new cars.
I've been commuting for a little over 20 years at this point, and I echo everybody's sentiment that this is probably the worst that I've seen it. 2 things. One, I don't envy your position. It's not an easy one, so good luck, and I hope that it works out. I'm slightly optimistic in what I've heard. Living at the end of the Babylon line brings on a whole different set of issues when there are delays. So we often, in Baldwin or Ruckle Center, when there are delays and the trains are not running as frequent as they normally would, the trains will pull into our station and you absolutely cannot get on. So they often cancel the trains from Freeport when, for whatever reason, when the trains are not running. So when the trains come from all the way out in Babylon, by the time they get to us, we can't even get on the train. So it just even delays us further. the amount of times that I've called into work and told my boss I was going to be late is almost comical at this point. I have missed more plays, soccer games, bedtimes than any parent should ever. And you know, my other concern is all of these things sound really great, and I look forward to these improvements, but where is this money going to come from?
Thank you. Charlton D'Souza, followed by Sharon Newman.
Good evening, Mr. Eng. I just want to thank you on behalf of all the passengers for your dedication and commitment to professional service. I'm a monthly ticket holder, and I spoke to you before at Atlantic Terminal. I ride the trains every day to work, and one of the things we need at the Queens Village station is we need another vending machine, because we only have 2 vending machines, and sometimes people, you know, they overuse it or it breaks down, and with the new Atlantic ticket program starting next week, that would be a great help. Also, the police situation at night. I noticed at Penn Station you have a lot of police officers and at Jamaica, but at Queens Village, when we get off the train, it is very dangerous. A few weeks ago, I was coming off the train, I think it was the 142 train, and I'm walking out of the station and I was walking down Springfield, and I look behind me and I see a guy with a hood. So I don't know if he was trying to rob me or what, but I had to move into the middle of the street. So I think safety is something that, you know, you could have your MP police officers coordinate with the precincts. Also in terms of Belmont Park, I live right next to Belmont Park, and unfortunately we can't use the station. It's closed all the time. So I hope that you will also make that station available for everyone, not only for Belmont Park riders exclusively. And you know, that is something you'll have to work out with the board and stuff like that. But most of your employees are very professional. They're doing a wonderful job, except the little incident I had on Sunday when one of your conductors closed the door on us and the train pulled out. And the doors, I was on the Babylon train, and the doors were not opening. So we went to the conductor, and he said one of the doors was broken or something happened. So the train announcer was telling the Hempstead train, keep your doors open. And when we got on the platform, he just closed the doors and left. So maybe that's something that you want to work out with your crew in terms of, you know, communicating, and you want to improve on that. But you guys are doing a wonderful job. We're very happy, and thank you for giving us an Atlantic ticket. We really appreciate that. Although I work in the city, I work at night, so being that the subways are really, really bad, it would really be nice if you guys could let us use the trains overnight, because the last train out of Atlantic Terminal Brooklyn is at 142. So if you could let us use the 259 train, and I think the 4-something train, that would be great. You know, that would really, really help us out. So thank you so much.
10 years ago, this is about the horns beeping. 10 years ago, I lived on a railroad crossing and swore I would never again, but the town of Oyster placed me in this complex and was placed in this particular apartment. On behalf of myself and my neighbors, mostly seniors and disabled, such as myself having MS, it's very stressful and not healthy. There is no consideration or respect for people living on or by the tracks.
Okay, so I want to go over the M3 situation. You know, Patrick Nowakowski, he wanted to get rid of them and leave us with a car shortage, but Phillip Eng wants to keep them because we need them. We still don't have the M9s yet. And until every M9, we don't have enough M9s to even replace all the M3s. So the M3s are sticking around. And I think this is a wise choice. They do need to maintain them better, but they're sticking around for a little while longer, perhaps even a few more years. You know, for those who love the railfan window, and you know, the M3s, people complain about them because they're old. It's because they're not taken care of properly. Hopefully, Phillip Eng will take better care of these trains. They were well made by Bud, an American company. And I still think they're still some of my favorite trains in the Long Island Railroad fleet, whether you like them or not. Yes, it's great to also have the front window. Obviously, that's a wonderful thing. But they will be sticking around. The M3s will be sticking around. The other thing is that didn't come up that I want to bring up is we're going to have a diesel car shortage this year because these MARC trains that we had last summer, unfortunately, the Long Island Railroad, for whatever reason, some kind of contract dispute, MARC gave these freaking things to New Jersey. New Jersey stole them from us. New Jersey Transit stole them from us. And we are going to be short cars this summer if we can't get these cars. I don't know why New Jersey Transit got them. It's really ridiculous because we need them a lot more than New Jersey Transit. And we need them, and hopefully we can get them. Otherwise, there's going to be a lot of car shortages on the Oyster Bay and Port Jeff branch, we talked about in the other video. Short trains, overcrowding, and of course some canceled trains too. The only saving grace is that there are generally less people commuting during the summer. But we need these cars. New Jersey, those cars are ours. All right. So we you know, New Jersey, this is kind of like a fight with New Jersey Transit, but we need those cars more than they do. We have way more ridership on our trains than they do. So you may have also seen Charles there, who was speaking. Actually, I actually had a nice talk with him, long talk with him tonight. He was speaking about Queens Village. They need more ticket machines there, and they also need better security. And Yuki also was in there talking about the buses. It was hard to understand him, but the MTA bus is not coming out here. Here is what I've heard. I'm not going to say where I got it from, but I'm going to say this, that there is a rumor that certain drivers have said that TWU Local 252 does not want the city buses coming out here. Local 252, that union supports Nice Bus. They actually support Nice Bus. So because of them, that's why the cheese is, and it'll be very interesting to see if the cheese is going to be out this weekend on the ride. I better not see that cheese there because it's going to be very sticky. So that's why the MTA buses are not coming out here. And also there were a lot of complaints from the MTA drivers about working the Long Island Railroad shuttles. They didn't like it. You know, I think the MTA should do it, but you know what? If the MTA can't do it, at least let them get private coaches. School buses are completely and utterly unacceptable for the transportation of adults on highways. Not only is it uncomfortable, not only is it unpleasant, not only is it a disgrace, it is a safety hazard as well. That is something that you know, that they really couldn't address. Hopefully Phillip Eng will do something about this. At least no more school buses. All right, that's, you know, I'll be as satisfied with no more school buses. All right. The other speakers spoke about horns blowing. I just left that in there because you know, I don't think it's fair. Once again, here's an example of disabled people being placed in a situation that's stressful for them. In a bad spot there at Bayshore. That was in there as well. Some speakers were speaking about also the changes with the when there's a disruption, they need better information. I'm trying to think of all the things that they covered, but a lot of good issues. There was a lot of stuff, also some nonsense that I kind of filtered out. If you want to watch the whole thing, I have that video up too. But this video is getting to be long enough, really. Anyway, on that note, I will be wrapping this video up. It's still a long video, but hopefully you made it through the whole thing. There were a lot of important things to cover, and you really got to see what the Babylon Branch people are all about. They have a power block that they like flexing their muscle, intimidating people, and Phillip Eng really kept saying over and over again, I'm looking out for everybody. He's not going to give anyone special treatment. He's looking out for everybody equally. And that's something that the Babylon Branch people can't stand to hear. And I do worry, Charles brought this up, that they could try to force Phillip Eng out. If they do, I will be absolutely livid. I will blow a gasket if they do. All right. I'm not going to let that happen because I think he's doing an excellent job. He's one of the best presidents I've ever seen at the Long Island Railroad, really listening to people, very friendly guy. He's really trying to look out for everybody. But no special treatment. Everybody is going to be treated fairly and equally, and that's what I want to see at the railroad, despite the whining from the people on the Babylon branch. So that's why I put this video together. You all need to know the way they behave and the way they act. There was also a woman from Rockville Center. Again, they act like they're the only ones that deal with overcrowded trains. Plenty of times when there's problems on the main line in Mineola, you can't get on the train either. It's jam-packed. They act like they're the only ones. They're not the only ones. We all suffer. And they suffer the least, but you know what? I'll put it this way. Everybody deserves to have fair, safe, reliable service, and Phillip Eng is really going to try to make that happen. So that is it for this video. I'm sorry if I didn't cover absolutely everything, but if you can attend the one in Suffolk County, I think Matt Camper will be there. Do that. Hopefully he'll film the whole thing, very much like I did. Again, I want to thank Phillip Eng for providing this if he is watching this video. I really think he is one of the best things that have happened to the Long Island Railroad in a long time. And he needs to stick by his core beliefs in making sure that we all receive fair service. Don't let the snobs intimidate you. Don't let them intimidate you. They may try, but I'm going to keep my eye on the snobs every time they act like the way they do, so everybody can see that the drama queens that they are down there on the pretty little Babylon branch, we're not going to put up with their attitudes and their intimidation. We're not going to put up with it, period. All right, so that is it for this video. Take care. Thank you for watching.